Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, I have something extra, extra special for you. Our good friend Jen Benson is with us tonight, CEO and founder of the Transplant Journey Inc., not for profit, assisting people through their transplant journeys, a double transplant survivor, simultaneous pancreas and kidney transplants, organ donor advocate, and dedicated to helping others with organ donation. Jen's story begins on October 15th, 1990, when she was first diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 11. Jen is a true pancreas kidney warrior who has battled over 34 years with brittle diabetes, 7 years of dialysis, and an 11-hour double transplant surgery. After returning from her honeymoon in October of 2009, she was told she would have to start hemodialysis. 2 weeks later, she did, in fact, start. Unfortunately, a kidney stone had landed her in the hospital. The stone, called septic shock, which provided a near death experience, eventually causing her kidneys to fail. In November of 2009, she started dialysis 3 weeks, 3 times a week, 4 hours a session. She was the youngest person in the clinic at that time. After extensive information gathering and researching by her family, they selected several transplant centers which performed numerous SPK, that's simultaneous pancreas kidney transplants in different regions of the United States. Her goal was to rid her body of both kidney failure and diabetes in one surgery. She was on the transplant waiting list for a deceased donor almost 7 full years. She required a deceased donor because she dreamed of a pancreas to treat her diabetes. As we shall see, Jen suffered greatly while she was on dialysis, between the time she was on dialysis and the time of her ultimate double transplant. And when I say that the lady suffered, I'm not kidding around. Okay, we have some very serious issues to discuss concerning that. On April 17th, 2015, she received a kidney and pancreas transplant from a deceased donor at New York Presbyterian Columbia University Irving Medical Center in New York, New York. She was hospitalized for 11 days. She left the hospital at 86 pounds, free of kidney failure and type 1 diabetes. Now, the only medications that she takes are for her transplant in the form of anti rejection medications. At a healthy 110, I got my leg weighs 110 pounds. At a healthy 110 pounds, she no longer requires dialysis or daily insulin injection. Her life has dramatically improved. She has a new lease on life due to her donor. Jen greatly appreciates that her life has changed so much because of an amazingly courageous family donating their 19-year-old son's organs when he unexpectedly passed away. There are several other transplant patients who have benefited from their generous gift who are alive today because of their shares. This is the reason organ donation is so vital to Jen and her family. The act of donating provides others in need with the opportunity to lead an abundant and rewarding life. Jen has worked tirelessly as an organ donation advisor and advocate with several organizations that help guide people through the process of organ donation. In fact, Jen has founded a not for profit organization called the Transplant Journey Inc., which is dedicated to assisting others in finding an easier path in obtaining a transplant with less emotional stress, struggle, and turmoil. The organization promotes active support systems, networking, and positive thinking. You can find the organization at its website, www.transplantjourney.org. Please give a warm welcome to one of the best organ donation advocates on the planet. Our good friend Jen Benson is with us tonight. Jen, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Uncle Jim. It's a true pleasure. I absolutely
Oh,
enjoyed seeing you last time in DC.
oh yeah, yeah. I thought it was unusual when we saw our good friend Steve Belcher, and he was telling us that we were keeping him up too late. So, any rate, our friend Roberta Reed is with us tonight and says hello. So, hi, Bobby. How are you?
Oh, hey, Bobby.
All right. Did I state everything correctly in the introduction?
It was pretty close. It was fun. I was actually transplanted August 17th of 2015, but close enough.
Bad Uncle Jim. There'll be a new
Couple
Uncle
months
Jim
off.
in the morning.
We're close.
So,
We're close.
please tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and employment experiences.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Connecticut for the majority of my life. And around ninth grade, 10th grade, I actually moved to Europe and graduated from high school over in Germany from an international school. So I had an incredible experience there and feel very, very lucky to have seen Europe and really traveled the globe for a bit of time and really dabbled. Um, in executive search for quite a period of time and really loved that. But it wasn't until diabetes kind of started to wreak havoc on me and had kind of considered going into med school, but saw my diabetes as a bit of a hindrance and decided that that would kind of get in the way and thought, okay, let me follow my dad's footsteps. My dad has worked in executive search ever since I was young and really had a keen interest in that. So that was what caused me to go into executive search. Um, Unfortunately, when I got sick and needed the kidney transplant, that's when all bets were off and executive search came to a screeching halt and was no longer able to do that. It was just, it took too much energy out of me. I wasn't able to continue working when I was on dialysis. I was dramatically sick. My blood pressure was just through the roof. And unfortunately, I was stuck in bed nonstop. Dialysis was just physically exhausting. My blood pressure was through the roof. I was vomiting nonstop. The headaches or extreme migraines, as I'm sure a lot of your viewers know. Returning back from hemodialysis, you're completely exhausted. Everything is drained from your body. 4.5 hour treatments for myself 3 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week. Being the youngest person in the dialysis clinic took a real emotional toll on me. I actually ended up originally trying to do PD dialysis. I was trained in PD dialysis originally. And when I was scheduled to go in to have the catheter placed, the anesthesiologist would not, unfortunately, put me under because my blood pressures were so high, as were my blood sugars. Um, so then I ended up, I believe it was at the 4 year mark, maybe 5 year mark, because of the emotional toll it was taking on me being in center, ended up switching to home hemo. So I did home hemo for a year as well, just to kind of help my mental health. And did that for a year. And then it became too dangerous for me because back then when I was doing it, it'll be 9 years for me this year that I've had my transplant. The next stage machine that I was doing, I couldn't do heparin throughout the treatment. I could only do it at the start, and I was clotting too much, so it was too dangerous. And almost, unfortunately, passed away. I ended up getting an air bubble in my lines. So I was forced to, unfortunately, go back to in-center hemodialysis, which is actually where I received the call. I was on the machine at my dialysis center and got the call with the offer.
Okay.
For my
Jen,
for
I
my
promise I'm going to go into some detail about all the
Okay.
things that you discussed.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about when you were first diagnosed with diabetes. How old were you at that time?
Yeah, I was 11 years old. I was 11 years old when I was diagnosed. I was actually diagnosed with MODY diabetes, which stands for mature onset of diabetes in youth. So I was type 2, but I was a slender diabetic. And my diagnosis, I was asymptomatic and it went unknown for about 6 months. and was in for a camp physical. And the doctor found my results. They had been filed away in the folder, and he found it. And I was brought in on a weekend then, and they did a glucose tolerance test. And that's when they discovered that I was a type 2 diabetic. And 3 years later, I switched over to becoming a type 1 diabetic.
Okay. It's my understanding that you dealt with this diabetes problem for almost 34 years. Is that a correct understanding?
It was, yeah, over 25 years. Correct. Yep. Yep.
Okay. I also understand that you suffered from a kidney stone that lodged itself in your urethra,
Correct.
causing septic shock. Can you tell us approximately when this happened?
Ooh, God, that was back in 2008. 2008 that occurred.
Okay. And your date of birth is when?
79.
Okay. And I understand that as a result of the septic shock that your organs began to shut down, you had extremely high blood pressure, you temporarily lost your hearing,
I did.
and this is what caused your kidneys to fail.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. They didn't realize the kidney stone that had lodged itself in the urethra. They didn't know what was going on. And, I kept complaining, I can't hear you. I can't hear. I was taken to the emergency room because I was having extreme pain. I hadn't had a kidney stone. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was just suffering from cramps. And, I kept saying, something's going on, something's going on. And all of a sudden they discovered my blood pressure just absolutely tanked to 60 over 40. And they were so busy because I kept banging on my ears saying, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. They were busy looking to find out what the cause of my loss of hearing was. Then all of a sudden, all my other organs were starting to fail. That's when they realized I was suffering from septic shock and I was in sepsis. And then they had to go in and do emergency surgery to remove the kidney stone. And that I almost died from septic shock. And then the kidneys, unfortunately, never recovered from that episode, hence causing the need for the kidney transplant.
Okay. I want to do a shameless plug. I got a lot of the information about Jen. If I can get the book enough. There it is.
There it is. Yep.
From this book, Organ Donation by Brenda Cortez.
That's where I wrote my chapter.
Yep. It's on Amazon. You can find it and buy it there. And by the way, all of my research, the links to my research, everything that we're going to talk about tonight, if you go to my personal Facebook page and you go to the comment section of my personal Facebook page, all that research is in there. So if you want to drill down, you want to learn a little bit more about Jen, you can do that. I understand you were hospitalized, and over the next couple of days, you were given so much saline that you gained over 30 pounds?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. That's unfortunately what caused the kidneys to not be able to recover. That was their thinking. That's truly what damaged the kidneys, and the fact that I was a diabetic. They just, poor little guys, they never returned to normal. Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
When did you actually start dialysis?
I started dialysis, unfortunately. I was married in a year later, and my husband and I came back from our honeymoon. And 2 weeks after returning from our honeymoon, I had to start dialysis. And my poor current ex-husband had no idea what dialysis even was. The doctors had to explain to him what dialysis was. He was totally clueless on it. None of his friends had never been through dialysis. His family members, everyone around him was clueless on dialysis. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understand this correctly because of some of your remarks. What modality did you begin with?
Yeah, of course. So I was trained in PD. Wasn't an option, but I did begin with hemo, in-center hemodialysis.
Okay, so I was right, 3 times a week, about 4 hours a session,
Yeah. Yeah, 4.5.
sometimes 4 times a week.
Yep, correct. Hmm.
Okay. Um, I read that you had great concerns about infection. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Because I did have a kidney and pancreas, the doctors kept telling me, Jen, it'll happen very soon for you because the wait list is shorter for people who are in need of dual organ transplants. So they kept assuring me it will happen quickly for you. Because as many of your viewers do know, the wait list for a kidney transplant is extensive. So I ended up with a portacath in my chest. And, I really didn't want to get a fistula or a graft in my arm. But my dialysis center kept pushing me to get a fistula or a graft, and I was rather against it. And they kept saying, it's very risky, it's immediate access to your heart. You can get an infection, you can die from this. So I was extremely careful about this because of the risk for infection. You can die from that if it gets infected because it does lead directly into your heart. So because I was on dialysis for 7 years, I did not shower for 7 years. I avoided showering. I washed my hair in the sink, over the sink, or I would go from time to time when I was feeling especially grungy and gross, and I would go to, Supercuts, and get my hair done in the sink. They would wash it for me. But I used what's called a bio patch, which is a very small patch that would go over my catheter for an added protection, added layer of protection that covered it. It has a special antibacterial layer that goes very tightly, snugly around the catheter, and it's covered with a special Tegaderm patch that protects it, and it's only opened every 7 days. So there's less exposure to outside bacteria and elements in the air that are opened up, because it's not exposed every time you go in and it doesn't have to be cleaned. And that really, I believe, kept me from ever getting an infection in my catheter. So I never in the 7 years had an infection. My catheter did have to be replaced several times, but it was never due to an infection. And I honestly think that's what saved me from that was that type of protection. I did sponge baths and stuff like that. And I sat in, about that much water in the tub, but I never once took a true shower because I was scared to death of getting an infection. Yeah.
Okay. At the time you went on dialysis, you mentioned that you were suffering from some symptoms. My list of symptoms include nausea, migraines, swelling of the legs, abdomen, and face, hands, feet, and toes,
Mhm.
constant itching from bumps, and bleeding from scratching the bumps,
Yeah.
and that your body failed to regulate temperature. You were always cold or freezing, I think is the
Yeah.
way you described it. Do I
Absolutely.
have that accurately? Did I state that correctly?
100%. That was all while I was on dialysis. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What I want to talk about now is some of your medical issues that came up between the time that you started dialysis and the time that you had your transplant.
Mhm.
Um, so I'll go down the list, and if you could respond
Yeah.
to each item, that'd be great, okay?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Uncontrollable high blood pressure.
Yep.
I, I,
That
I think, what did you mention, 220 over 180?
220 over 180 constantly. Constantly.
Okay, and just so folks know, a normal blood pressure is like 120 over 80.
Oh, sorry about the train passing. My apologies.
No, I live in Hammond. We have trains here too that go through all the time. So it might be my train. You never know. You
Yeah.
you described for us that you had mini strokes. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I suffered three mini strokes while the entire time I was on dialysis because of as a result of the high blood pressure. My body just didn't absorb the blood pressure medication while I was on it because of as a result of the diabetes. Yeah, yeah. So I was in
Oh,
and out of the hospital receiving intravenous blood pressure medications continuously to try and bring that down and to control it, regulate it.
okay. I understand that you were also discovered to have brain lesions. Can you talk to us about that, please?
The brain lesions is the only reason I know I had the mini strokes. I wasn't even aware of the mini strokes until the MRI showed the brain lesions. Yeah, yeah.
You
I
had
collapsed.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I collapsed one day in my home as a result of a mini stroke, and that's what caused the hospital to have to do the MRI, and to say, were you even aware of this? I said, absolutely not. I obviously knew I was having the crazy blood pressure readings because they had me checking my blood pressure numerous times a day because it was just so out of control, and I was trying so many different blood pressure medications to try and get a hold of it, and nothing would help. And that's when they said, Jen, you've had 3 mini strokes. And they pointed out the brain lesions on the MRI for us to see. Very scary, very, very scary.
Okay. My notes tell me that you had C. diff infections. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The C. diff infections were a result of, unfortunately, the dialysis center, and also a result of the hospitalizations. Unfortunately, not so clean environments led to the constant C. diff infections. So it was kind of a vicious cycle that kept reoccurring and reoccurring.
Multiple stomach infections?
The stomach infections were the C. diff. Yeah, same thing, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You told me before the broadcast started you had 2 heart attacks.
The heart attacks were a result of the high potassium levels. That happened
Okay.
while I was actually in the hospital. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Multiple sclerosis?
The multiple sclerosis was a misdiagnosis upon which the hospital said, well, good news. This was when they were checking, when they saw the MRI results. They said, well, the good news is we think you have MS. This was while I was alone in the hospital waiting for a dialysis treatment that day. And they came through while they were reading the MRI results. And I was there by myself as a young woman in my late 20s, early 30s, because I was in and out of the hospital continuously. And I just thought to myself, how can a doctor walk in and tell someone that this is what you have and it's good news?
Wow.
And it just kind of left me thinking, how do you tell someone that this is your fate for the rest of your life? You could possibly be facing MS or something scary that could be in your brain, all alone without any support, a care partner, a loved one, a family member, not even at the time when I was married, not even my husband. And you're about to go on a dialysis machine.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Shingles.
Shingles. Yep.
Did you have shingles too?
I had shingles too. I faced shingles for about 6 weeks. I had to battle shingles on my head, no less, one of the most sensitive places to battle shingles. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Someone who's calling themselves the journey is wishing you well. Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay, well let us know who you
Thank
are
you.
so we can
Thank you.
acknowledge.
I absolutely appreciate that. I'll take it. Thank you so much. I'm doing great now. It was quite the journey. I take it. I'm on the journey. You're on the journey. We're all warriors in this.
I have a note about your health status at that time. You were at home most of the time. You were bedridden.
I was.
You had difficulty walking due to atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
You were on an oxygen tank,
Mm-hmm.
and you had stopped urinating altogether. Do I state that correctly?
Spot on. Yeah. Yeah.
When are you first? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I was in a wheelchair for 6 of the 7 years while I waited for my transplant. Yeah.
Oh, our friend, the journey. That's Lisa G.
Oh, okay.
So hi, Lisa. How you doing? Lisa, by the way, is almost always here. So I appreciate the following.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Okay. Tell us what it was like when you used to go to dialysis all the time. I know that you were taking a lot of equipment and in an oversized wheelchair.
extra wide wheelchair, extra wide bag, because I was constantly cold, while I was having my dialysis treatment, because they kind of manipulate the temperature on the machine depending what they want your blood pressure to do. So my bag was absolutely enormous because it was packed with all the blankets and the cushion, because I was so thin at the time, because you lose so much muscle mass while you're receiving dialysis. And I was on such a restrictive diet back then, because I was trying to follow the renal diet. I was trying to follow the diabetic diet. So weight was just dropping off of me. So I had a big, thick, plushy blanket for the chair and a big blanket to wrap myself in. It was truly an ordeal. It was truly an ordeal. And then in the wheelchair, then you had to be weighed. Dialysis was a real drag. And my oxygen machine would hang off the back of my wheelchair.
Okay. Our friend Jonathan Trailer, Hope with Jonathan's here. Shout out to John. Thanks, buddy.
Hey, Jonathan.
Talk to us a little bit about when you were first listed for transplant. When did that happen?
That happened that happened about 2010. I was actually listed out at University of Minnesota Fairview. I had originally tried to list at University of Wisconsin-Madison. They wouldn't accept me into their program because I was deemed too sick. That's where I really truly wanted to list, because they were kind of the rock stars for simultaneous pancreas kidney transplants. But some people will be familiar with this. If you're too sick and you're a threat and you might die on the table, that will throw off their results. They won't get funding, they won't get grants, and it doesn't look good for their results. So they wouldn't take me. But University of Minnesota Fairview accepted me into their program. So I was thrilled. So that was where I was listed. Yeah.
Okay.
Even though I live in Connecticut. Yeah.
When were you listed at New York Press?
Oh, that was right at the very end. I was listed out at Columbia. Let's see, I was transplanted 50, probably 2015, end of 14, 15. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Right at the very end.
All right. All the illnesses that we talked about, can you tell us, how did they affect your transplant status? Explain to people what happens when you're put on hold.
I was constantly placed on the inactive list. So when you're placed on the inactive list, you're still accruing time, you're still gaining time on the list, but you will not be called with an offer for an organ of any kind. But it's good because you want to constantly be gaining your time, because that helps move you up on the list. But you won't, like I said, you won't be called with an offer because you're too sick. And they do this for your own good, because you would never want to receive an organ while you're sick, right? Because you don't want an infection to happen. You don't want to be on the table if you're not healthy. So there's a reason they have you inactive for like I said, risk of infection. You're not healthy enough. You don't want to receive this organ if there's something going on. You want to be in the best possible shape to receive an organ, right? So that's why transplant centers are very, stay healthy, make sure you're walking, make sure you're eating properly, make sure you're exercising to the best of your capability while you wait for this transplant to take place.
Okay. You mentioned that you were first listed in Minnesota. It's my understanding that you actually moved from Connecticut to Minnesota to be closer to a transplant center that you thought might be a little quicker than in New York.
Yes, correct. Yep.
All right. And eventually you ended up moving back to Connecticut, as you said.
Yep. Yeah. We did move out to Minnesota for a period of time, thinking maybe, they're not calling us with offers because they know how far we are, and they're overlooking us with maybe a good kidney and pancreas are coming in. And they're like, she lives out in Connecticut, it's too far. She's not going to make it in time. We're going to give this offer to someone else and we're going to overlook her. So we thought, all right, let's move out there just in case, because we went through a period of time where nothing was happening and it was a long period of time. So we got kind of anxious. So we moved out there. In the time that we lived out there, which was 6 months, not a single offer happened. So we gave up on that theory and we moved back. And they said to us, the holidays are coming up, and we moved back out to Connecticut.
Okay. And I want people to understand, in addition to being put on hold frequently, the average wait time in the New York area at that time was about 7 years, and there were 93,000 people waiting for New York transplants. This would have been what, in 2021?
Yeah.
Or so?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you did list at some other places, MUSC, Emory, Georgetown.
Yep.
Those are what my notes tell me. Do I have that right?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how long actually was the wait between the time that you started dialysis and the time of the transplant?
Let's see. I waited 7 years. And from the time I actually listed, I will tell you this, from the time I listed and then started the process at other transplant centers. So I was at Minnesota Fairview for 6.5 years. And I received a call from Columbia, New York Presbyterian. I had not even received my evaluation acceptance, like my letter that says you've been listed with Columbia. When my husband at the time came back that night after my transplant, it was in our mailbox.
Oh, timely notice. You mentioned your ex-husband.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how this affected his employment status and how he came to leave his company and work at home to take care of you.
Yeah. So he worked for a great company. They were very supportive of what we were going through. He did have to file for Family Medical Leave Act. And they were very supportive of that. He kept them abreast as to what we were going through the entire time, because we received from Minnesota. It was either, I'm a little off on this, I lost count, because went through, it was either 12 or 13 offers in the time I was listed with them that never panned out, unfortunately, for different rhyme or reasons. We flew out there from Connecticut, 4 times, and it never happened. Unfortunately, the first time I was scrubbed, ready to go, bonnet on, booties, the whole shebang. And the surgeon walked in and said, "Jen, I'm sorry, it's a no-go. It's not going to happen. We don't like the look of," I can't remember now. It was either the kidney or the pancreas, unfortunately. And I was absolutely devastated. And then
boy.
that happened two or three other times. The fourth time, unfortunately, we were at the airport and we were able to pull our luggage off, so we didn't actually have to make the flight.
Wow.
And then there were a couple of other times where obviously it just stopped with the calls, so we didn't have to make the unfortunate, trek and everything like that. So again, his company knew what we were going through, the emotional toll it was taking, mental, physical, the whole 9 yards. But he was very good at, telling them, "Hey, I'm going to need time off. We're hopping a flight. We're going out there. Jen's going to get the transplant." And then obviously it didn't pan out. So they finally allowed him to just work from home. He worked remotely before, working from home and remotely was a thing to do like it is now. So he was able to, this is also when I finally was doing home dialysis. He would work, downstairs, and I would be doing my home dialysis treatments upstairs. So They were an incredible company, very supportive of what we were going through, very supportive of what we were going through. and he worked in
Uh,
finance, so it was doable at that time. You know, he could work on his computer. So I was very thankful for that. It was that kind of job that allowed the flexibility. Had we not been in that situation, I'm not sure what we would have been able to do. Yeah, yeah,
okay. And I want people to understand when we're talking about the Family Medical Leave Act, the FMLA,
yeah,
that provides qualified employees with up to 12 weeks of
yeah.
unpaid job protected leave for a year. And it also requires that their group health benefits be maintained.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons that is a qualifier is that that individual is taking care of an immediately a family member, spouse, child, parent with a serious health condition. Kidney failure is obviously a serious health condition. And if you were doing, was it home hemodialysis at home or was it
I was.
peritoneal?
Yeah, I was doing home hemo.
That would be, a pretty serious health condition and an
Yeah,
immediate family member, helping. And that requires needles, right? He was
yeah,
he was helping you insert needles.
yeah. Well, my chest catheter, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So people understand. What advice did your initial advice did your nephrologist give you concerning transplant?
It was very difficult for me. I really wasn't given much. It came from my endocrinologist. She was really the one in the end that gave me the best advice. She was the one that pushed me to look into the pancreas transplant. My family and I were absolutely clueless when it came to that. We didn't even know about a pancreas transplant. Um, we just thought, okay, I'll get the kidney transplant and that'll be the end of it, and I'll be stuck with diabetes, for the rest of my life, and it is what it is. And we thought, okay, fine. And she said, you guys need to look into the pancreas transplant. And she guided us to the Midwest. And she said, they're really kind of the rock stars in the simultaneous pancreas kidney transplants. At the time, they were leading the charge. And because so much time had passed while I was waiting, kind of the rest of the country has since now caught up. And there are now amazing transplant centers throughout the country that do excellent SPKs. And that was why I decided to start multi-listing throughout the United States to increase my odds. But she gave me the best advice that I needed to look into dual transplant, which would also, kind of help me in terms of increasing my odds, getting higher on the list. But I will also say that there is a list of criteria for which you have to meet for a pancreas transplant. It's not just any diabetic can get a pancreas transplant.
Okay. A couple of times now you have talked about we moved out to Minnesota. We have to move back. I want people to understand that's just not you and your husband. Your parents moved too, did they
Yes.
not?
Yes, they did. They did. It was really just my mom, my dad, who still works. He would fly back and forth when it allowed with his work. But my mom also came as well because my parents were very supportive of what I was going through. I'm an only child, so they were amazing to help me through this. I could not have done it if it weren't for my parents also helping me.
Okay. I understand that after 4.5 years, you switched from in-center hemodialysis to home hemodialysis. You went through training to do that, and you had a series of home nursing assistants. Can you tell us a little bit about the issues that you had with home hemodialysis?
Yeah, really, because my blood pressure was so volatile, it was so extreme high, as you stated early on, 220 over 180. No one wanted to treat me. People were scared to death to work with me at home. I was incredibly fragile. My numbers were through the roof. And then during the middle of the treatment, I would just bottom out. I would literally just bottom out. My blood pressure would drop so dramatically. So we would start working with a nurse, and then they would quit halfway through the training process. My mom, scared to death of needles, doesn't like blood, didn't like working with the lines. Her fingers aren't so nimble. And then my husband, who was working from home, because he was working from home and it was the middle of the day, he had to be working on and off, so he couldn't take away because he was still trying to work and support the family. We had to look into hiring, a nurse. The aides weren't interested in it. It was a financial burden. So it was very difficult. So we went through 4 nurses before we finally found someone. And that was a paramedic in the end that finally stepped up and was willing to do this.
Okay. You have mentioned previously that you have problems with clotting and an embolism. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Believe it or not, actually, while I was going through the training with the 3rd nurse, I ended up throwing a huge clot because I think I explained to you, the machine I was using, the next stage machine I was using, this is now going on, like 15 years, 14 years, you couldn't put heparin, which is what helps thin the blood. You couldn't put that in throughout the treatment. You could only put it at the beginning of the treatment in the machine. So my blood was extremely thick. Unfortunately, my treatments for home hemo would run 6 hours every day, which was horrendous. And I ended up having to drag it out very, very long because my blood was so thick. It almost looked like Hershey's syrup because it was so thick and so just horrible. Sorry to be graphic, viewers. But yeah, I ended up throwing clots all the time in the little machine, in that blood thing. I'm blanking on what it's called. People will know who watch the show. And I ended up throwing clot. And then I had an air embolism in the line and almost passed away. And the person who was training my nurse at the time ended up panicking and gave the wrong order to the nurse that was training and said, hit the stop button in the middle of it. And that just caused total chaos. And I almost went into cardiac arrest. So the whole situation was incredibly scary for my nurse that was training, and also for the trainer on the machine. So thank God I wasn't really fully with it because I was having a little bit of dialysis brain in the whole moment, and they just had me put my legs up on a pillow so as not to avoid anything, and EMS had to be called to the house.
Okay, and the embolism fortunately did not reach your heart, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and after this incident, you ended back on in-center hemodialysis.
Yeah, I was deemed too dangerous to do home hemo.
Mm-hmm. Jen, I need you to be honest with me about this question.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel at the time that you might die while you were on dialysis?
Absolutely. I thought I was never going to be transplanted.
Okay. But you were listed. Talk to us a little bit about the difficulty that you had finding a living donor. I know we went through parents and friends. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and some of the false alarms?
Yeah. I'm very honest with my story. I don't kind of sugarcoat anything, and I always tell people I'm an open book. It was difficult for me. My husband never stepped forward to get tested. My family never stepped forward to be tested. I don't know if it's because I'm adopted that people thought maybe that's why in my family, like, they didn't understand the matching. None of my closest friends ever said, hey, let me see if I'm a match. Let me see if I can donate. There were never any offers like that took place. And I'm also not sure if it's because very soon after it was then, okay, I need a kidney and a pancreas. And, obviously I went the deceased donor route. That's why. And I didn't do what's called a PAC, which is pancreas after kidney. So I'm not sure if maybe that was the hesitation in terms of the living donor hesitation. And so there wasn't much, okay, I'm going to search for a living kidney donor. I'm not really sure why there was such disconnect with my friends and family, and also, my husband at the time. But it was very difficult for me, very difficult now looking back also. why that happened. It was only my parents. And my parents were obviously deemed too old. And also because, they were my immediate caregivers. So the transplant center said, I'm sorry, but we're not going to go down that road with them. But, I'm obviously like a staunch proponent of living donation, because I think it's incredible what people do. And deceased donation is also keenly important, because, certain organs, you need deceased donors, hence my pancreas. That's why I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you had 12 or 13 offers for transplant that never materialized, a whole bunch of false alarms.
Yeah.
Where they actually had you in the hospital, we're talking about wheeling you down to the operating room, and then it didn't happen, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Some crazy offers that came through. One was for a horseshoe-shaped kidney, which I personally declined, because a horseshoe-shaped kidney has the potential of giving you kidney stones in the future. And I was like, well, that's what landed me here in the first place.
Right.
So I'm gonna pass that one up. Thanks, but no thanks. So that one was a no-go. Another one was an offer that was coming all the way from Hawaii. And that one, by the time that was going to have gotten to me, that was going to be too much ischemic time, cold time. So I was like, that one, no. That one didn't sound good. And another one that was an offer, the person unfortunately had passed away in a fire. And again, that was way too much. The oxygen, they had been deprived of oxygen for way too long, and the creatinine, when I asked, I personally thought it was way too high, so we turned down that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about some good news now, Jen. Let's talk about the day that you got the call. Tell us a little bit about that, and I understand you're back in Connecticut by this time, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Best call ever. I honestly, I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't, because we'd had so many false alarms. I was sitting in dialysis, having my treatment, and the coordinator from Columbia called, and I was kind of like, you're putting me on, because I hadn't even gotten my letter yet. They had just called to say, okay, you're listed, and I was like, okay, well, please, we've been through this road before. And she said, how soon can you be here? And I said, I just need to run home and, grab my suitcase. I can be there in, an hour. But I never thought it was going to happen. I really, truly didn't. And then we got there and she said, okay, just, come to the ER and check in at the front desk. I said, okay, I'll be there. But even when we got to Columbia, I didn't think it was going to happen. I was so skeptical that I was going to get there and they'll be like, it doesn't look good. And they were going to send us home.
And this particular kidney came from Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee?
It did. Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about the actual day of your simultaneous pancreas kidney transplant. And just so I get the date right this time, August 17th, 2015.
Yeah.
Do I have the date right? Tell us a little bit about the actual day of the transplant. What happened?
We got to the hospital probably around 5 p.m. Because I finished up my treatment, went home, grabbed my suitcase. They told me to take a shower. We drove in. We showed up and they said, okay, go have a seat, on the gurney, put your gown on. The resident came in and said, okay, this is how the surgery is going to go down. You're going to have a little scar that's going to be about this big, a half moon crescent shape. And that's going to be it. And I was like, something doesn't sound right. And I was like, I don't trust you at all. You're making me really nervous. Right. And I was like, And I looked at my parents and I was like, I want to go home. I want to go home. And then the surgeon came in and then she explained how everything was going to go down. And I was like, I like her. I trust her. And she explained I was going to be cut right down the middle from like the bottom of my breastbone all the way down to my pubic bone. And that's when everything got real. And
Okay.
she said, okay, if I don't see you again, that means I like the look of the organs and I'm going to see you in the OR. And that's when I went, okay, I'm getting
Okay.
transplanted tonight.
And this is Dr. Kazi, Kasi?
Casey McCune.
Casey.
Yep.
Okay. Transplant surgeon.
Yep.
It's my understanding that the surgery was an incredible, smashing success.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yep.
How long were you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital for 11 days and my surgery was like 11 hours. So 11 and 11.
Okay. And folks, scrolling across the stream now, that is the link to the book that I showed you earlier. I'll try to do it again.
There we
This
go.
book.
Yep. Yep.
All right. You can get it at Amazon. And there's a whole series of us in there that had kidney issues, organ donation issues that you can read about. Jen's story appears a little earlier in the book. They put Uncle Jim in the back. So
I was going to say it's got 25 different stories of how people, we each wrote our own chapter of how we've all been affected by organ donation. It's a really great book. Everyone writes their own chapter. It's a really fantastic book. I highly recommend it that people look into that book. It's fantastic.
okay. And like I said, the link there is on Amazon.
Yep.
Immediately after the surgery, did you have any health issues or complications?
I really, oh, yes, I did. I suffered from 2 bouts of CMV. My donor, I had CMV. I had never had CMV, which is very common. Most people have that virus in them. It's not a big deal for the average Joe to have CMV. Most people get it, but I unfortunately had never been exposed to CMV, so that I do now take a anti-rejection medication for CMV now for the rest of my life. Just one more pill, not a big deal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Since the time of your transplant to the present, have you had any health issues or complications? How are you doing since you've been transplanted?
You know what? I feel fantastic. I live life to the fullest. I really can't complain. I no longer take any medications for blood pressure. My blood pressure actually tends to run low. I tend to run about, 90 over 60, 70. And it's really kind of funny. I'll go into doctor's offices and they'll ask me if I'm still breathing. And ask me if they need to shock me and surprise me to make sure I'm alive. My blood sugar is, again, they'll say, "Oh my God, Jen, your blood sugar is better than mine." Again, the nurses will say that. My creatinine, I don't want to brag, but I will. My creatinine runs around like 0.72 to 0.75 when I get it checked. So we'll knock wood, and I'll just say I'm incredibly thankful, grateful to my donor. He was 19 years old, and he suffered a brain bleed. That's what he passed from. So I'm grateful to him and his family for making the ultimate sacrifice and their courageous decision to donate his organs. And I am just the lucky recipient of that. But my health has really been overall quite good. I am now battling some cancer issues as a result of the immunosuppressants, which is unfortunate, but it is a side effect of these immunosuppressants. So I do tell people they are a double-edged sword. So I'm a strong proponent of advocating for newer and better medications for the transplant community. I think we all need to ask for that. It is our right, because the newest medication that came out was back in 2011. So I think we as a patient community need to be asking for that. And that's only fair for us, right? We all are warriors, and we are strong survivors. And I think that's something we have the right to ask for, right? Since we have been through so much and we continue to go through so much. So I think we as a community need to come together and be one voice and to ask for that.
Okay. By the way, our buddy Sam Day checked in. He made the weirdest statement. His statement says, "Keep eating coffee ice cream." I don't understand, Jen.
He knows I love coffee ice cream, and everyone's telling me I need to gain weight, so to keep eating my coffee ice cream.
Let's talk a little bit about your motivation to become an organ donation advocate for others. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's really, I went through so much, and I just the reason I started my non-for-profit was because I don't want people to suffer what I went through. I want to make the process easier for them. I want to make sure the support is there for them because I had incredible support, but I know it's lacking for so many others out there. And I think there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. And when you're sick, you don't have the energy to figure out what's accurate, what's not accurate, what's a scam, what's not a scam, and to pick through all the pieces, right? You feel like garbage when you're sick, whether it's kidney, whether it's lung, whether it's liver, whether it's heart. So if I can do anything to help people in any aspect whatsoever, I want to be there. Like I said, whether it's support, whether it's finding a resource, whether it's to be the voice on their behalf, I want to do that, right? It's my way of giving back and saying thank you for this incredible gift that I've received. And that's truly why I started my organization, just in any way possible. And Transplant Journey doesn't charge for our services. I'm just me giving back and being appreciative and saying thank you to do this, truly.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the advocacy groups that you either have worked with in the past or you're currently working with. The Transplant Forum for the Executive Committee and Benefit Committee at Columbia. What's that all about?
Basically, the Transplant Forum is a part of Columbia. We raise money for research for all transplant disciplines, or sorry, all organ disciplines regarding transplant. Yep. The Executive Committee. Yep.
Okay. The Filter Project, you were on with Josh Morrison, a waitlist zero guy?
Yep, correct. Yep. That was about helping people finding living kidney donors.
Okay. You were or are a UNOS ambassador?
Yep, am.
And you also work as an NKF peer mentor. What does a peer mentor do?
Really, peer mentoring helps people in terms of guiding people, supporting them, giving them advice based on your own experience, answering questions.
Another group, Hearts for Russ.
Hearts for Russ, incredible organization. I'm on the board with Hearts for Us. They're entering their 11th year now. They're based out of New York. The brother, or Russ actually, passed away a few days after receiving his heart transplant, and they donate money for small non-for-profits and support them. They're all about organ donation and awareness.
The National Kidney Donation Organization, the NKDO.
They work closely with organ donors, living kidney donors who are looking to donate organs. They guide and support them through the living kidney experience. They guide them on how to do that, how to donate their kidneys.
Okay, and of course I have to ask about the American Kidney Fund because that's where we met.
Yep, absolutely. Another incredible organization, really staunch supporters and advocacy, doing a lot on the Capitol.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your not-for-profit, the Transplant Journey, Inc. When, in fact, was that formed?
That was formed, worst timing, but sort of great timing, in March of 2020.
Okay. And can you give us, you talked to us that you want to help people through their transplant journey. Can you give us some idea of the types of things that the Transplant Journey Inc. group does? You mentioned support group at one point.
We run a bi-monthly support group meeting that meets virtually. We also have a support group page, Facebook support group page we're just shy of 7,000 members, that represents all organ disciplines. There we celebrate milestones, answer questions based on experience. People promote anything they've been through. We celebrate anniversaries there. We feature guest speakers there. And really what I do is I will help people kind of navigate the system. I will help them, select dialysis modalities. I will help them also locate transplant centers. That might be a better choice for them with a lower wait list, depending on their organ. I will help them in terms of selecting housing, making sure they have transportation lined up, things along those lines. And also advocacy work in terms of, Transplant Journey is recently working with Honor the Gift in terms of cell-free DNA testing to make sure that's available and that doesn't get, the coverage does not stop.
Can you talk to us about what you expect Transplant Journey to do in the future? Do we have any future plans that you can discuss with us that are not confidential?
Yeah, Transplant Journey is really looking to kind of move transplants forward. So far to date, we've facilitated 59 transplants, and I'd really like to do more than 59 transplants. Looking to partner with some other like-minded organizations. I would like to see more in terms of organizations coming together and working as one patient voice rather than the competition amongst the non-for-profits. With these smaller organizations, I don't like that there's the competition. I think we all can do more if we work together. There's no reason that we should be working against each other if we want to get more people off the wait list.
Okay. And just so people know, streaming across your screen is the website for the Transplant Journey, www.transplantjourney.org. The phone number there is 203-682-5890. And again, all this information is in if this is too fast for you, all that information is in the comments to the original broadcast on my Facebook page, which is pinned to the top, so you can't miss it. And I asked Jen, I said, do I use your general email address to contact the organization? Jen said, oh, no. You use my email address. So the Jen Benson ad address that is screaming across your stream, you get Jen when you write that. So
yep, you get me.
So is there anything new, different, or exciting that's coming up for Jen Benson?
There's a lot of stuff. I don't know. I'm going to peter myself out, probably. No, I will tell people we're next August 15th, we're hosting a great webinar featuring Dr. Marcus Pereira, who's the medical director of infectious disease at Columbia. He's just fantastic. He really helped me through a bunch of hurdles when I had COVID, when I had C. diff. He's going to be speaking on PEMGARDA, which is the new protective measure for helping with some of the new variants that are out for the immunocompromised population. That's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for those of you that are looking for that information, please send me an email and I'm happy to send you the Zoom link. Or if you're a part of our Facebook support group community, that link will be posted there. You can find the Zoom information there. So please feel free to join that. That will be really informative. And I think will help a lot of people learn more about the variants and how to protect yourselves from COVID if you're concerned.
Sam left us a note. anniversary with 2 exclamation points. Do you know what he's talking about?
Oh, my anniversary is obviously coming up on the 17th. My
And
9-year anniversary is coming up. Yeah. Thanks,
okay.
Sam.
All right. I do this with all of my broadcasts. Is there any statement that you would like to make to our audience before we conclude the broadcast for the evening? Any final statement, Jen?
Yeah, my final statement is for everyone who is still, waiting for a transplant, please do not give up hope. I was so very close to giving up hope at year 5. I was in a very dark, dark place. I thought my transplant was never going to happen. And when I say I was in a dark place, I was really broken, very, very dark. Truly didn't think my transplant was ever going to happen after I'd been through so many calls that never panned out. Your time will come. Your organ is definitely meant for you when that time happens. Your organ has your name on it. Do not give up hope. Do not give up faith. And if you have been transplanted already, please live your life to the fullest, right? Life is precious. Life is a gift, but do it safely and protect those organs, right? Make smart choices and live your life to the best, right? Enjoy it. We're here for a reason, and enjoy it truly, because I know I'm living my life to the fullest, and I'm grateful for every day that I'm here. And just thank you guys for watching tonight. Uncle Jim, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. We've had a great time, and I would love to have you on Transplant Journey and to tell your story one time. I think people would really enjoy it.
Absolutely. You
And
let me know
again,
when and where, and I'll show up.
awesome. And thank you guys for the viewers tonight, and anyone who wants to come, please join, our Facebook support group page. It's great. A lot of people share their experiences and ask questions, and we're all one community. The transplant community is a great, fabulous, supportive place to be. We're all really caring because we've all been through it. And we're all warriors and survivors.
I want you to know, Jen, your final words have already had an effect. Our friend Robin Stevens writes, I'm waiting to see if my donor is a match. So we do have people that are waiting that are listening.
Awesome. Well, good luck, Robin. I hope they're a match, depending what the organ is. If it's a kidney, listen, they don't necessarily need to be a match. They can go into the swap or exchange program. That's all you need.
Okay.
Reach
Any
out
rate, Jen,
if you need some help.
yeah, please contact Jen.
Yep.
Or Sam, since Sam's on the broadcast too, sort of. Any rate, Jen, I wanted to thank you for coming on. This has been such a great educational experience, and I know that everyone has learned so much. And man, your kidney story, your kidney pancreas story, your diabetes story, it's quite unique.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything quite like that, and your ability to overcome all these obstacles that we discussed during the broadcast. I mean, you are one mighty woman to be able to do all of those things and still manage to persevere long enough to be successful. And then the fact that after all that, you turn around and help other people. You're just amazing. I'm in awe.
Thank you very much.
Just in awe. You're one of my heroes.
Oh, thanks, Uncle Jim. I appreciate that.
No worries. And I'm going to say I have a couple of things I have to button up with my audience, and I've kept you. It's over an hour now, almost 10 minutes over an hour. And as you know, I promised an hour. So
Yep. We don't want to hog airtime.
So I'm going to let you go, but
Okay.
I just want to say again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for spending time with us, and what a great story that you share.
Of course.
It's a one of a kind story. I've never quite heard anything like it.
Of course. Anytime. Happy to share it.
All right. Well, thank you, Jen.
Of course.
Any rate, folks, and Sam, next week, we have another AKFer that's going to be on with us on August 16th. We're broadcasting with AJ Jazz Coulter. He is a kidney advocate. He's also a comedian. He travels all over the country and does stand-up, tells great jokes. Very interesting man. So that should be a great broadcast. You don't want to miss that. And I will be posting about that during the week. After the broadcast, as you know, I will be posting the replay. So there's an instant replay that's available on either Facebook or YouTube. So if you missed the broadcast or you have friends that missed the broadcast and you want them to see it, have no fear. You can catch the replay, and I will be posting that in all 100 of my kidney groups and on my personal page and all the platforms that you see me on. So it should be easy to find. So, any rate, I just want to say thank you for tuning in tonight. I want to thank Jen again. Just a terrific job. I'd like taking the night off. I might as well have put my feet up on my coffee table and taken a nap. I mean, she did such a wonderful job. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week. Thank you again, Jen.
Bye, Uncle Jim.
Bye-bye now.